While the existence of an oligarchy and international deep state should not be ignored as a political force of history, arranging wars, assassinations, and promoting economic enslavement of people and nations throughout the centuries, the guilt cannot entirely be placed on this apparatus alone. As Shakespeare's Cassius once said to Brutus, "Our fate is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings." Instead of hearing calls to end the never-ending wars, to break up the Wall Street too big to fails, or to return America to its anti-colonial heritage, today we hear only calls for tearing down monuments, where droves of jaded victims of critical theory call for an undoing of the Constitution as a fraud wrapped in a lie built upon the hypocrisy of white privilege with no redeeming value anywhere to be found. I would like to take a moment to do something a tad unpopular by honoring the positive traditions of the too often forgotten America, whose father of founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, shaped not merely a revolution of 13 independence-minded colonies against the British Empire, but rather a global movement stretching from Ireland, France, Poland, and Prussia to Russia, to India, and even to Africa. Without this international array of republican-minded patriots across cultures, religions, and continents, the Revolution of 1776 that established on this earth for the first time a system of government founded upon the consent of the governed and the protection of inalienable rights would never have succeeded. After Franklin's success of July 4th, 1776, he understood that the young republic's fate hinged upon his ability to engage the international network of statesmen and scientists which he had organized over the course of 30 years, and especially since his 1752 discovery of electricity. It was this later discovery that made Franklin an international sensation, earning him the title Prometheus of America, immortalized in the 1815 painting by Benjamin West. This post-1776 phase of his plan took him to Paris, where he was made America's ambassador to France. It was there that Franklin arranged the French-American Treaty of Alliance of 1778 that turned the tide of the Revolution towards the American cause, which previously had had zero chance of success. Franklin had already organized his allies in Prussia, where Friedrich the Great voiced open support for the cause, and the great military strategist William von Steuben became the Inspector General of the Continental Army, providing military drills and modern military techniques to the undisciplined citizen soldiers of the USA. The Republican Polish military engineer and colonel Tadeusz Kosciuszko served as Brigadier General in the Continental Army, and the young Marquis de Lafayette, who arrived illegally in America along with other French troops before the 1778 Alliance Treaty, made invaluable contributions to the cause. Over 20 generals of the Continental Congress were Irishmen, and many of them led the later efforts to create an Irish Revolution in 1798 and 99. As ambassador to France, Franklin met many members of the European intelligentsia, including key Russian figures. Among them, a young woman named Ekaterina Dashkova, the younger friend and confidant of Catherine the Great and president of the Russian Academy of Sciences, who became friends with the elder scientist and was soon inducted into Franklin's Philosophical Society, becoming the society's first woman and first Russian member. In turn, Dashkova made Franklin the first American member of the Russian Academy of Sciences in 1781. It was through these connections that Franklin played a leading role in organizing the League of Armed Neutrality under the helm of Catherine the Great, which ensured that vital supplies and arms would make their way from Europe to America without being blocked by British ships. Within the first 12 months, this league grew to include the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Austria, and Prussia. The League laid the foundations of modern maritime law. Franklin's French networks had deep connections into India as well, which made themselves felt in the French-Indian alliance of 1780 that saw pro-American Muslim leader Hydar Ali lead thousands of Indian soldiers on a march across Western Ghats to attack the strategic British base of Fort St. George near the port town of Madras. Ali was supported by French troops on land and sea under the command of Admiral Suffren. The great Indian revolutionary had already defeated the British in 1760 and represented a powerful independence force in India that kept British oligarchs up at night. It would still be many years before Britain would gain control of this crown jewel of the empire. During this conflict, Hydar Ali's forces innovated rockets which decimated British troops and forced Britain to redirect over 20% of her naval fleet from fighting in the Americas. This was a vital boon to the French and American forces a world away. Hydar Ali's son, Tipu Sultan, who valiantly led the continued wars against the British for another decade after his father's 1782 death, even wrote a message to the Continental Congress in 1781, saying, "Every blow that is struck in the cause of American liberty throughout the world, in France, India, and elsewhere, and so long as a single, insolent, savage tyrant remains, the struggle shall continue." It is noteworthy that America's flagship of the Continental Fleet was named the Hydar Ali in honor of his father. In Morocco, the French were able to arrange an important dialogue between Emperor Sidi Muhammad and American officials, which saved American shipping from the ravages of Barbary pirates who ruled the coasts of Africa and the Straits of Gibraltar. During the opening of the war, the British made sure to inform these Barbary pirates of American shipping and used these forces against American ships bound for Europe. Sidi Muhammad agreed to supply protection for America's ships and guaranteed them safe harbor from the Tunisian and Algerian pirates. Soon, the Continental Congress had passed an act which called for Franklin to lead a team of negotiators to work out a deal with Morocco and other North African countries, saying, "Resolved that a commission be issued to Mr. J. Adams, Mr. B. Franklin, and Mr. T. Jefferson, giving powers to them to make and receive propositions for such treaties of amity and commerce, and to negotiate and sign the same, transmitting them to Congress for their final ratification, and that such commission be in force for a term not exceeding 2 years." Although international political chaos and the constant treachery and intrigue within America during its early years resulted in very little progress on this front, it is noteworthy that Morocco was the first nation in the world to recognize America's independence on December 20th, 1777. Even though Franklin didn't appear to have any direct contact with the Chinese during this period, Chinese thought did figure prominently in the thinking of both Ben Franklin and Tom Paine. Franklin had published many writings on Confucius from 1737 to 1757, which shaped many points of wisdom in his Poor Richard's Almanac. Writing to a friend in 1747, Franklin stated, "Confucius was my example. I followed Confucius." As Professor David Wang points out, many of Franklin's insights into civil administration and law derived from his studies of China. While there are many more chapters to this international story, to take away is that America is both more than you thought it was, and also less than it was meant to be. According to the intentions of such Renaissance men as Benjamin Franklin, the American cause was never meant to be a local issue defined by 13 rebelling colonies, but rather a new age of reason for all mankind,